love you. Okay, you guys ready? Okay. Hey, Damalis, and welcome back. I'm so excited to introduce to you my friend Cara today. We met back from a T-ball team with our kids, and we had so much in common. It was so fun. When we first met, it was like we were just like chipmunks bouncing off of a wall over having similar things in common. And it was just like the best day ever. And I think since then, our friendship has just really blossomed. And so today, the thing that really connected us was homeschooling and using similar curriculum. And I thought it would be really fun to talk all things homeschooling, including the biggest factor of leaving a career and coming to the homeschool, stay at home mom side of things, and how that can completely alter your perception of your value and your worth, and knowing that you're okay to homeschool. So, anyways, without further ado, this is my friend Cara. Cara, what could you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah,
Tell
sure.
us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Cara. I have a wonderful husband. We've been married, almost 13 years now. We just celebrated our 12-year anniversary. We have two kids. So my oldest, Axel, is 7, and my daughter, Beatrix, is 4. And my husband is in the military. And so that was a new transition for us. And so he's just been in now, I guess, almost 4 years. And so that's been part of our adjustment journey too. Obviously, with the age of my kids, like been a lot of shifting. So we're currently in California and planning another move in the next 5 months-ish into this year to Colorado. So yeah, lots going on.
Yeah. So when I met you, you were a stay-at-home mom, and like I said, you were homeschooling, and we got so excited over
Yeah,
what was it?
I think Treehouse Schoolhouse was
Treehouse
like our
Schoolhouse.
first
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we started
Yeah.
talking about their like Christmas curriculum and just
Yes.
how not as many people knew about her
Yes.
curriculum and how good it is. Uh,
Hmm.
but then when we were talking and getting to know one another, you said that you had had a pretty big career before you had kids. So,
Hmm.
what made you shift from what you were doing to being a
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom and homeschooling?
Yeah, so it definitely was not something on my radar, if I'm being honest. So I've worked since I was 16. I've always had a job of some kind, whether it was hourly, and then I went to college and I worked all through college. My first job out of college was in college recruiting, actually, for an engineering company, and so it was a very large company. I hired like over 300 people a year. I ran an internship program, so it was a pretty big gig. And then during that time, I decided to go back for my master's degree, and that kind of segued into my career into teaching, which I loved. And so I've taught all levels of high school English, and I've taught a little bit of college classes too. And so teaching was the last career that I had before I had kids. And so I had been teaching for, I guess, about 4 years when my son um, was born. And so, yeah, I thought for a while I would just stay with teaching. It's a pretty good schedule. Summers off, like pretty regular hours. But then my son was born, and I had a really hard time leaving him at daycare, and it
So
was
when
really
you
difficult.
were
Yeah,
teaching and you were pregnant with him, your intent was once you had him to put him in
keep
daycare
working.
to go back.
Yeah, because our school, even our district, had a daycare for teachers. It was like only for teachers' kids. It was a discounted program. It was fantastic quality care. So I really wasn't worried
Yeah.
about his safety or anything. And so I just thought this will be fine. Like I'll keep teaching. He'll go to school, he'll go to his daycare and everything will be fine. And but then things just changed. And so I stuck it out for a while and I was like, okay, we can make this work. And I do think in some ways it really made me appreciate my time with him. Like I valued those hours after school with him. I never really was like, I need a break or anything like that because it was precious time that we got together as a family. So I do appreciate that. But when my daughter was born, it just became more apparent. I was like, this is two kids now that I'm missing out on for so much time. And I just really had a hard time
Hmm.
with that.
How
So,
long did he go to daycare until you were like, enough is enough? I can't do this anymore.
so he was 3 when Beatrix was born.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was a COVID baby. So things kind of, we had planned that year was probably going to be my last year teaching, was
Yeah.
going into COVID. And then she was born the November before COVID started in March. And so we had already kind of quietly, Michael and I, been talking about me possibly not working. He was joining the military. And so we thought we may be able to make this work on one income. We may just try to figure this out, or maybe I can work remote or I can figure something out, but I cannot do this day-to-day teaching gig anymore. And then COVID happened and kind of forced my hand a little bit. And I got a taste of what it was like to be home with them all day, every
Mm.
day. And I was like, yeah, there's no going back. Like, this is
Yeah.
it. So,
How was the change in your kids' behavior when you were able to stay home all day with them and like let them know like this is not just because of COVID, it's a choice that I'm
yeah.
making and I get to stay home with you now.
Yeah, I think I saw the biggest change in my son. Axel's always struggled a little bit with social anxiety and has trouble opening up, especially to other adults. So even though he was at the same daycare program, he rarely spoke to his teachers. They would talk to me all the time about it. Like he was pretty quiet. He just didn't really open up. And so being home really allowed him to blossom. And I just got to see his talking and his interaction and his bravery, like all those things just started blossoming when he was given the space to be comfortable all day, every day. And so that was a huge influence on my decision to homeschool, is watching his difference being in school versus or a daycare and then being home
Yeah.
with.
So when you first decided to homeschool, did you plan to homeschool just like the first year or two and then intent of going back to work?
Yeah, I mean that was initially my plan. And so when my husband joined, we moved first to Vandenberg, and they had there a pre-K program that was free for kids to go to. It was a 3 hours a day. And so
Yeah.
I thought, all right, let's try this out again. He's a little older now. Let's see how this goes. Same kind of results. We did it for 3 months. And then I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to be homeschooling kindergarten because there's just no way he's going to be able to showcase all that he's capable of, no matter how good his teacher is. Like he could have the best kindergarten teacher in the world, and it's not going to help him. And so I thought we'll try kindergarten, and then maybe by first grade, he'll be ready. Because I've never had a necessarily negative, opinion of public schooling. And so I wasn't like gung ho against it. But yeah, so then we did kindergarten, and then I just really liked it. I was like,
Yes.
okay.
So I actually had the same view because I taught for a year and was planning to teach. Like when I met my husband, my perspective of stay at home and doing homeschooling was like not even in my mind. Like I
Yeah,
went to school to teach. I love teaching,
yeah,
taught, and then got pregnant and taught for a year. And everyone was like, well, what are you doing like afterwards? Like, what's your plan? And I was like, well, really, I don't have a plan. Like, my plan is to have the baby, and then we're moving because my husband and I, like,
yeah,
we're we're moving because he wants to figure out what his calling and desire was. And I was like, okay, yeah, totally. I get that. And his desire at the time was to go into the military for full term, 20 years. And I was like, okay, so that short period of time taking off ended up leading into longer time off, which ended up with us moving. And I like when we moved, we went to Florida, and I was like, okay, I can transfer my teacher's certificate over to this state so
mhm,
easily, just have to apply for it, and I can get a job. And it was just so funny because like his career was meaning that he was going to be gone for 2 months and then home 2 months and then gone 2 months. And so kind of like you, I was looking at my daycare options of like, well, I need to go back to school. But the longer amount of time I had spending with my daughter, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing all of her first steps. I'm seeing all of her first words. I'm seeing all
Ah,
of her first developmental stages of things that I could miss if I sent her to daycare. And
yeah,
I am just very intentional and very personal with the ones who I love. It's just like when I become friends with you and I love you, I become friends with you and I love you and I want to stay with you and I want to like get to know you. And I just am so deep
yeah,
that I was like, I could not imagine sending my daughter and not having those moments with her because you just become best friends with your kids because you just love them because
yeah,
they're literal DNA from you. So
yeah.
I totally get that. Do you think that homeschooling your kids has been super impactful for them and you?
Yes, actually, I was thinking about this the other day because, this is something my husband and I talk about a lot is, how long do we want to do this? Like, how invested
Mhm.
are we? What's the future of our homeschooling journey?
Yeah,
And
because when you start, you don't think you're going to keep doing it. You
yes,
think you're going to go back to work, and then the next year rolls in and you're still doing it because you're like, I love it.
yes,
Like, let's just keep doing what's working.
yes. And I just see the fruit of it so much in my kids. There's so many things. I mean, for sure, in their relationship with one another, I've seen such closeness between the two of them. Um, and, being a boy girl, sometimes that doesn't happen, I feel like, in mixed gender siblings, but they are just very close and they love one another. They love to play. And so, seeing that relationship form is so special because of their ages. If he was in public school, he'd be gone all day, and so they would be missing out on the majority of their time together.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I love watching Axel learn in his own way. Like the individualized learning is so special. He's like obsessed with Legos, and so being able to incorporate that into homeschooling, and things like that, like the stuff he wants to learn about. Right now, he's really on a Zelda kick. And so we don't do a ton of screen time, but he does get to play on the Switch. But we have a guidebook. This just happened this week, but he's been reading this guidebook for fun. Okay. It's like, I don't know, 250 pages of all of the weapons
Yes.
and bad guys and all the things. And he's got it almost memorized. I mean, it's insane to me, like the level of understanding and memory. And then he just wanted to voluntarily copy some of it down in his notebook. So he started just like handwriting parts of it out that he wanted to remember. And I was just thinking, there's no way he would be doing this if he was in school all day. Like he would not have the
Right.
energy for that when he got home. And I don't know, it's just really special.
Yes. I was actually talking to my mom about being at school versus being at home yesterday.
Mhm.
And the benefits of it, and how I was telling her if my oldest daughter was in school, when she gets upset and doesn't understand something, she kind of shuts down. And so,
Yes.
like, one of those things for her is just like the longevity of like having the stamina to finish her work. She's like, I get
Yeah.
started, and then she doesn't realize it's a 2 page math thing, and she only sees one side. And so when she sees the other side, she shuts down. And I'm
Yes.
like, if you were in school, like, I'm so grateful you're not, because if you were in school, like, the teacher doesn't know when you've shut down and they're going to keep going. And you're still 3 pages behind trying to figure something out and not verbalizing it. I'm like,
Yes.
it's kind of the same thing. It's like when they're excited about something, they're going to want to do it like because they want to.
Yeah.
And when it's something that they're having to do because it's part of school and they're having to learn it, and they don't want to and they don't get it and they shut down, it's like, wow, we are so blessed. And I'm so thankful that I'm here to like help you move
Yes.
forward. But yeah, there's been some moments where she has this book called Dangerous Book for Girls, and she just like
Yeah.
reads it and it's like, let's do this. And I'm like, okay. She goes, oh, I'm so glad this isn't school and this is just for me and fun. And I'm like, is it though?
Little do you know. I know. Yeah,
Man.
it's just so cool. And I totally understand what you're saying with Cora because Axel he's very similar in that way. Like has perfectionistic tendencies. And so if he can't get it right away or something is too difficult looking, then he will shut down. And so I have the luxury of being able to predict when that's going to happen and then
Yeah.
adapt it also. And, there was one point in kindergarten, but we ended up scrapping the curriculum because it just did not work for his anxiety. But I
Mhm.
was just like cutting the worksheets up into little strips. So
Yep.
visually, he didn't have to see it. So and the best teacher in the world could have those intentions, but when you have a classroom of 30 kids, you just
Yep.
can't do that. You just can't. And so, yeah, those kinds of
Yeah,
benefits.
because you have the kids who are like excelling and they're already done before you're
Yes.
done giving instructions. They're like, okay, what's next? And then you have the kid who's like still on problem one and
Yeah.
struggling and not getting it.
And with kids with anxiety, when they shut down or quit and they get away with it, it gives like a dopamine release. And so then that encourages them to continue that behavior because it relieves their anxiety. So when
Mhm.
they get out of doing something hard and they get away with it, it's like, oh, phew, I don't have to do that. And so if they're in a classroom and a teacher's not pushing them to try to complete something, they're just going to develop that bad habit. And so
Yeah.
that's something we work on really hard is like pushing through that feeling of anxiety to see you are capable of this. This is just your mind telling you something that isn't true.
Yes, recently just created a poster for us so that anytime that she's having those negative setbacks, even just like thoughts that she's verbalizing, like, Mommy, I can't do this. This is too hard. I created the growth mindset, just like some phrases
Yeah.
that she's constantly saying and having, like, okay, we're not saying that. We're saying this instead. Like, this might be hard, but if I push through, I can do it and it'll become easier for me the next time, you know? And
Yep.
so every time she says it, she's like, I'm like, Cora, look over at their poster. What do we say instead of that? And what's really funny is even though we've only been homeschooling for a week and a half now, she'll start saying something and she'll be like, well, that's not true. I can, like she's slowly
Yeah.
starting to have that like change in the way that she thinks about how she can work.
Yeah. What a powerful gift for her too, for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, now that you're saying that about the dopamine, thinking back to like my previous classrooms and my kids, it's like I can totally see that. Like there are kids who just constantly try to sneak by
Yeah.
and they could care less about a grade that they're given in elementary school. And
Yeah.
when their parents don't care, they just keep sneaking by.
Hmm.
Man, man. Okay, so with being homeschooling, like your kids,
Yeah.
what are some of the benefits that you've seen for your kids? But
Uh-huh.
what have been some of the benefits that you've seen for yourself?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on, I guess, the for the kids. So I think for me, and maybe this goes to the question too about, leaving my career, which has been a struggle. And I mean, I have gone back and forth on this so many times because a lot of what I view of as being successful or having achievement,
Mhm.
like I'm a high achieving kind of person. That's just how I'm wired. And so it's been very difficult for me to reframe what does that mean if I'm not
Yeah,
working, I'm not getting promoted, I'm not leading
you're
teams,
not getting paid. That's a
I'm not getting
huge
paid.
factor.
Yeah,
For
like there's
many women, the
nothing.
success is like, how much am I making? Am
Yes,
I
exactly.
bringing
I mean,
something to the table for my
yeah,
family?
exactly. I mean, we cut our income in half basically when I quit working. And so that was an adjustment. And so I think in some ways it's been a really good growth opportunity for me of letting go of some of that need to control things, learning to rely on my husband more, learning to rely on God more, and just kind of taking the pressure off of myself. I think I've realized I have lived under a lot of outside expectation for a lot of my life. And I'm getting this new opportunity to think about how do I want to spend my time really? If it's just for me and my family, like what is important to me? What do I enjoy doing? What are my hobbies? Like, what are my passions? Because so much of that gets put to the side when you're balancing work and family. You just don't have time for a lot of that stuff. And
Yeah.
so I think that's been an unexpected reward of homeschooling is getting the chance to learn things with my kids. And
Yeah.
do fun things I never did as a kid or didn't really learn about, and then finding time for myself in ways that I haven't ever really had before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I are very similar because when I was working, I felt so much joy in the fact that I was helping financially in the matter.
Yeah.
And I loved my job. And I found myself feeling successful, even if I was drained every day because of the pregnancy and just the emotional work that you put into 30
Yeah.
students. Um, and then going to being a stay at home temporarily, temporarily, I was like, okay, this is just temporary. This is just temporary. I just kept telling myself that. And then when it wasn't temporary, it was like, I felt so bad, like something was
Yeah.
wrong with me because I wasn't putting something on the table. And I think that I think Americans, I'm not sure about other countries because I'm still learning, but
Yeah.
Americans, I feel, put a lot of pressure to have dual income. And
Yeah.
that's just not, it's just not good. Not everyone is made to have dual income. And I feel like God's made us all very different with very special talents and skills. And I think that we're still valuable to being a
Yeah.
key aspect of our family as a stay at home mom. And I
Hmm.
think like there are so many things that have just come to surface with statistics of things about how moms work like three jobs as a stay at home mom. Like, you're a personal chef, you're a personal cleaner, you're doing
Hmm.
everything, scheduling everything. And then when you're a teacher for your kids, like that's another
Right.
job. You don't take your clothes to a laundromat, like you're doing all of the laundry yourself. Like there are so many aspects that go into being a stay at home mom. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people don't give credit where credit is due. And I think it's really easy for stay at home moms or people who want to homeschool or who are homeschooling to not give themselves credit because of the
Yeah.
statistics and because of the worldview. And
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I
that it's
totally agree.
so hard for us to just take a deep breath and say, okay,
Yeah.
God's got us and we're doing a good job, even though we're not successful, even in our own minds, because we are being successful. We're raising up our kids and we're doing a good job doing
Right.
it.
And I mean, the way I think about it is basically my job now is I am teaching
Yep.
second grade and, TK or whatever right now for
Yeah.
pediatrics. And so I mean, and this is tough for me as a high school student. I'm like, or a teacher, I taught all like upper level classes.
Hmm.
So learning to teach early elementary is a lot of learning for me of how do I teach phonics? How do I teach spelling? How do I teach these foundational skills? And so that is a job. And when I see my kids learning, it's just teaching me to reframe that success. It can be small, and that's okay as long as I'm faithful to what God has called me to at this time.
Yeah.
That faithfulness is being successful,
And you know
through
what
that.
I love about that is that your kids and my kids, they're watching us as we're going
Yeah,
through this. Like if it's hard for us and we're struggling or it's something new and we're learning, like that's such a wonderful opportunity to let them know and be like, hey, I'm learning this with you and we're going to learn alongside of one another. Or
yeah,
this is really frustrating for me. I need you to just give me a moment because I don't know what I'm doing and I need to figure it out so that way I can help you. Like they
yeah,
see us overcoming hardship and, new things and
yeah,
doing it with a positive perspective.
yes.
I
Hmm.
love that. So, yeah, I think we talked about it being hard leaving the work field and not having an income. Yeah, for sure. We've touched note on that. So, if there's anyone who you think out there would want to homeschool but are working full time and they're scared to not have that dual income, how would you encourage them?
I think I would just say, you can always do it just for a year. I
Yep.
mean, I just, even if you just try it, just see if you can make it work, and give it a shot. And I was amazed at the areas in our budget that I was able to trim back,
Mhm.
and also the free resources available to me to homeschool. I mean, there are so many resources out there now, online resources, digital resources, resources made by homeschooling moms who make their own curriculum. I mean, there are so many materials that you can get for free. Your library is a wealth of information. They have tons of books, they have online materials. You can do interlibrary loans. Usually you have access to like Libby and things like that for ebooks. I mean, there's just so many ways to make homeschooling affordable. You do not have to spend a lot of money to do it if you don't want to. And I know so many homeschooling moms who find ways of making income. And that's something I'm kind of thinking about now is like, is there something I'm passionate about that I would maybe want to do as an income stream for myself? Maybe writing unit studies or something like that. If I'm doing
You'd
something
be
with my
so
kids,
good at that.
make it for other kids, or I know
Yes.
several homeschooling moms who have like a micro bakery or whatever it is. But, I think if you think creatively that you can find the ways to trim the budget, take advantage of the free resources available, and maybe find another stream of income now that you're at home and able to use your time in different ways than when you're working. And thinking of the cost savings. I mean, I don't have to have a work wardrobe anymore. I'm not commuting to a job every day. I'm not tempted by coffee or eating out or something like that as much. I cook most of our meals at home, so we're not eating out at restaurants as often. I mean, there's a lot of places in our budget where when I quit working, we didn't need to spend the money in those areas anymore. Um, so yeah, there's just another thought to think about. Like
I think
just
another one of those budget factors is if you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, you don't have to pay for daycare anymore if you have more little ones.
yes,
That's a
it took
huge
50% of
cost.
my income.
Yep.
50%. Like it was not that much difference really that I was bringing home. So finding that little amount to cover, I mean, granted, when you have school age kids, that's a little different, but at the same time, you have school supplies, team sports, and all the fees that go with that, instrument costs, like all the things that come up in a school environment. It's costly still to send your kids to school. So
Yeah.
at least when you're in home, you get to kind of control those expenses a little bit more. So
That was one of like the factors of when I was looking at going back to work. I was like, okay, if I go back to work, I'd make this amount as a salary per year. And if I needed to go to work, then I would need to go to daycare. And that's this amount of each year. And I was like, really, I'm only making that much. And I was like, is it
yeah,
worth it to miss out on all of those moments for me? Some people
yeah,
it is. Some people it
yes,
is because like mentally they need that
yep,
break and they need to
yes,
just have, and I get it. I
yeah,
totally get that. And then, for me, with my husband being gone for so much of the year, I was like, that's just not enough to make it worth it
yeah,
for me.
yes.
Yeah. So, what's been a recent motherhood highlight? Like, what's something that just made you smile and brought joy?
I think it's really been my kids' relationship to one another. Like over the last, I don't know what it is, something about the last 4 weeks or so, there's just such a different level of relationship there where they're like cheering each other on at the different events that they're in and like rooting for each other's success. And I've watched Axel like read things to Beatrix and want to share things with her and compliment her drawings and stuff just organically, and just watching the sweetness of
Yeah.
their relationship that's like has nothing really to do with me. Like I'm not coaching it. It's just happening because I think they get so much opportunity to practice that, and they're just so close. And it like I could not put a price tag on that. Like for me, that's almost like 90% of why I want to continue homeschooling is just for them to be together, you know?
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
what's the age gap between them?
They're 3 years apart.
3. Okay. My brother and I were 3.5.
Yeah.
But in school years, we were 4. And so
Yes.
we never saw each other because he was 5th grade. I was kindergarten. He was middle school. I was elementary school. He was high school. I was middle school. When I got to high school, he was in college. So we never interacted. We never saw each other. And
Yeah.
our relationship was non existent until we were both out of college. And I
Yes,
was like,
that's me and my brother.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of what happened in the past and what happened to me as a child, I was like, the one thing I desired most as a child was to have a sibling to play with. Like I
Hmm.
had the sibling, but I didn't have the sibling to play with. And I was like, I'm going to do everything I can when I have kids for them to be able to interact and to play together because it's so precious. My brother and I
Yeah.
get along so well now. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
wish we had this when we were in school. He's like,
I
I know,
know.
me
I
too.
know.
But you don't know
Just
that when
lost
you're a
time.
kid. Yeah,
Yeah, you don't. You
you
don't.
really
You
don't.
don't.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, speaking of family, do you have a family recipe or anything that you can share with us? I feel like as moms, we're always looking for like what's for dinner because we're our family's personal chef. It's one of our
Yes,
jobs, you know.
it's true.
I'm
One
always
of
looking for
my
good recipes.
Yeah, I think probably one of my go-tos is like a bacon and potato soup. My kids
Ooh,
love potato soup. It's so easy to throw in the crock pot at the beginning of the day or in an Instapot at the end of the day if you
yeah.
forgot to have anything. Um, but yeah, that's probably one of my family's go-to. And then like a secret addition would be some coconut milk at the end, and it
Ooh,
makes it a little creamy, adds some depth of flavor.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
send me that
bacon.
link so I can add
Yes,
the
I
recipe
will.
down below because that sounds really good. Like I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
I always love potatoes and soup for the way that they like hold their structure, but then when you eat it, it's nice and like soft. So it's
Yes.
not like a
This
big
is
crunch.
it's my comfort recipe for sure.
Oh, I love that. All right. Well, do you want to pray over all of our listeners today?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to be together with my good friend Courtney and for all the people listening. I'm just thankful that you bring us all together to share and commiserate and encourage one another. Lord, I just want to lift up the moms who are struggling to you today and just asking you to be near to them, to give them encouragement, to help them face these questions with boldness and with faith of your provision and that you have planned for them the exact path they need to take, and that all they have to do to be faithful is step into that path, Lord. I just pray that you would help pave the way for those who want to homeschool and for those who are opting out, that you would give them peace with that decision too. That you would just let them rest in the knowledge that what you have planned for their family is the good thing for that time. Lord, I just pray for the moms who are trying to do it all on their own, that they would just remember that they have you as their source of strength, their source of energy, and that you would just help them to seek you out in the day to day and the small moments and the washing dishes and the doing laundry and the picking up crayons off the floor, that they would just find ways to glorify you through their obedience, and to find joy in loving their families and modeling for them and serving their families well. And Lord, I just pray that you would bring joy in our children, for all of us, that you would just help us to find enjoyment in every moment we get with them, that you would give us the eyes to see the growth that's happening and to just trust their development to you, Lord. That ultimately we're just laying the kindling and you're lighting the fire, and we can trust in that process. And I just pray all these things in your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Oh, well, Cara, thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us on Damalis. I always have so much fun
this is
chatting
great.
with you, but to be able to
I do
like talk
too.
to you like homeschooling, which we're both passionate about for a podcast
Yeah.
for other women and moms, I think is just going to be so encouraging for somebody out there. So thank you, Damalis, for
Great.
tuning in. And I hope you tune in 2 weeks to hear our next episode. We'll see you next time.